Hello everyone, this is Pablo Castillo. I am a senior lecturer at the School of Law of the University of Sheffield, and in this video I'm gonna present and talk to you a little bit about this Springer brief book that I recently published, Judicial Governance and Democracy in Europe. But before I start, I want to thank my friends of Diritti Comparati and especially Giuseppe Martinico for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about my research. So this research, Judicial Governance and Democracy in Europe, makes three main contributions. The first of them is I classify countries of Europe and Eurasia, 46 countries, into the different models of judicial governance, the Judicial Council model, the Court Service model, the Ministry of Justice model, and other models. So this is the first contribution. I try to provide for a systematic classification of these countries into the different models of judicial governance. This is the starting point of my research. In a second step, and a second contribution consists in trying to understand, using empirical methods, what's the association and the relationship between these different models of judicial governance and the quality of democracy in the countries of the sample. And in a third step, building on this analysis, I provide for a third contribution, which are some policy reflections on which are the best ways to design judicial governance so that we can ensure and maximize democratic quality. So this research started, like many researches, it started with a paradox. In my initial analysis, I observed that countries that rely on the Judicial Council model do slightly worse on average in terms of democratic quality than other countries, and especially than countries that rely on the Court Service model. And this was a paradox for two reasons. One, the Judicial Council model is the most frequent and the most popular model of judicial governance in my sample. The second paradox, the second reason why this was interesting is that European institutions recommend very often the Judicial Council model to countries. So I wanted to understand what was behind this paradoxical relationship, and in order to understand this paradox, what I did was to rely on a multi-methods approach. I use statistics and I use qualitative comparative analysis. Now, my statistical analysis relied on the theory of modernization. As you know, the theory of modernization poses that there is an association between economic development and democratic quality. And for this reason, in order to understand democratic quality and to what extent models of judicial governance have an impact on democratic quality, I had to include modernization in the equation and economic development. So in a first step, as I say, I use robust regressions to test the impact of judicial governance on democratic quality once we control for modernization, and in particular for economic development as a proxy to modernization. And my findings were that actually, when we take economic development and modernization into account, judicial governance does not seem to be significantly associated to democratic quality on average, as a net effect. Now, these were the results of my statistical analysis, but I wanted to double check the results using a different technique. In particular, I use qualitative comparative analysis, because qualitative comparative analysis would allow me to shed light on this question from a different perspective. First, because beyond net effects, that is what statistical analysis help us to understand, qualitative comparative analysis would help me understand this association, this relationship in specific cases, and also it would help me understand how factors related to judicial governance interact with modernization, but also with judicial independence, judicial corruption, membership of the EU, etc. So my qualitative comparative analysis and the findings of this analysis, they revealed a number of very interesting patterns. The first of them is that authoritarian countries never rely on the model of independent judicial councils. So said in other terms, put in other terms, for a country to be authoritarian, it is a necessary condition that the model of independent judicial councils is absent. And then this is telling us something in a specific cases that is very relevant. My second finding in this qualitative comparative analysis was that for countries with high levels of democratic quality, however, what matters in terms of judicial factors is the level of judicial independence, having a high level of judicial independence, having low levels of judicial corruption, but the model of judicial governance was not relevant to understand high levels of democratic quality. And this can be illustrated with some examples. For instance, we know that Germany, for instance, has a high level of democratic quality and they rely on the Ministry of Justice model, or Denmark, that also has a very high level of democratic quality and relies on the court service model. But then this is not to say that the model of independent judicial councils is not important for democratic quality. As I say, authoritarian countries never rely on this type of model of judicial governance. And also I found that other conditions being similar. For countries that are authoritarian or have very low levels of democratic quality, the difference between these countries and countries with moderate levels of democratic quality, not high levels of democratic quality, but low, moderate levels of democratic quality, one of the main differences was that authoritarian countries or countries with low levels of democratic quality never relied on the model of independent judicial councils. However, countries with otherwise are similar but rely on the model of independent judicial councils achieve intermediate levels of democratic quality. So these were the findings of the research. I hope you will find the book interesting. Of course, there is much more in the book. I hope you will find it interesting. This book is free for download online. It's open access. So I hope you will find it interesting. I hope to make a contribution to our understanding of this very important phenomenon. And I want to thank you for your attention and for watching this video. Thank you so much.